I wouldn't say it worked well last time, but it worked with about 100 people helping me because my tech ability is so. I'm sorry that I'm this way, you guys. It's just, I'm not a morning person, and yeah, and I'm really depressed. And here comes Bella. Hey, Bella, come on.
So at least we figured it out last time how it works with the recording and how to
She
share
worked the same way,
Yeah. So we're recording this meeting now, and my name is Mila, and I welcome everybody here. Shami was supposed to facilitate this call, but he just let us know a few minutes before that he's kind of stressed with time because he's preparing for some travels. So we're going to be without him. And that means that we kind of need to figure out all together what we want to do on this call. Yay!
Yay!
Yeah. So since there's not too many of us, maybe we could just have a quick round of where we're at in the world and what kind of wishes we have from these 2 hours together. Does that sound like an okay thing to do or not? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Yes, nods. Let's go for that. So who'd like to? Maybe I could start to give an example of where I'm at. Depression, that word speaks to me for sure. Yeah, that's there. Kind of a bit of apathy as well. And also openness to whatever will come out of this call, and curiosity as well, because the idea was to introduce restorative circles. And Shami is the one with most hands-on experience, and he's not here, but we have other people here with more experience, so maybe we'll get something out of it anyways. What's mostly there for me right now is I would love to get something practical out of this call, and I know that there are already people on this call who might be interested in figuring out what would be a meaningful way to talk about ongoing conflicts that exist for us. So just talking about, yeah, that would be something that would make sense for me, like how to move into talking about conflicts that exist, to be more clear on that. That would be a nice thing to do during this call if possible. And I'm looking forward to swimming after the call and getting clean. I'm dirty. That's it for me.
And where are you in the world, Mila?
I'm in Helsinki in Finland, and it's gray and cloudy and no leaves on the trees, and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's going to get dark soon.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to go get my coffee, but I can be listening. Oh, I'll take this out.
So who wants to go next?
I can go next. Apathy kind of resonated with me, Mila. That was feeling pretty apathetic yesterday. I'm finished my contract, and pretty much like clockwork or whatever, every time I finish a contract, I go through a couple of days of existential free fall, which is irritating, and I'd really like to kind of develop a more concrete idea of what I'm doing by way of a career change, and that's creating a bit of paralysis and uncertainty, and I've been wrestling with that. And but I went to a yoga class last night and found out I have chakras, and boy, is my pelvis opened up. So I'm excited about that. Had to share that with somebody this morning. And our weather here is about as crappy in the morning as yours is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's me.
What would you like to get out of the call, if anything?
I never know what to expect from these things, but I always walk away with some amazing stuff. So I'm open and optimistic.
So who's next?
I can go. already said a bit. I'm in Rosenberg, Texas. It's 7-something in the morning, and it is gray, but the sun will probably come out of the clouds. And maybe I'm still like not the time change, which I know it was only an hour, but I do have trouble adjusting to it. Also, yeah, I'm kind of bummed that Shami didn't let us know sooner. And then in another way, whenever something like this happens, I really go inside and go, how often do I do that? You know, I'm reacting to that. How often am I maybe afraid to tell folks what's going on with me? And so I wait to the last minute and go, by the way, I can't pay you, or I'm not coming, or so that's just an interesting exploration for me. For the call, yeah, I'm grateful Mila's here. She can lend more structure probably to it. I'm also aware of the intention to share the restorative circles process, and also Dominic's request to give what my sense is background, history, and some of the cultural context in which the process emerged. And I think Mikhail could speak really well to that. I could a little, and also I do like the idea of just maybe talking about just ways to talk about conflicts that emerge in the NBC online groups, or any online Facebook groups, because it can be outside of a formal system, as well as we could work. I can think it can be a both and we could work towards a system that's more, I guess I would call it inclusive or established. And then there's really the one thing that sticks in my mind is we aren't a community per se, as in we don't sort of live together. Our decisions they impact each other in some ways, but not in the way they would if we were a community, as in a cohesive, that we depended on one another. But maybe exploring the ways that we do impact one another, it would also be interesting. So that's me.
All right, I guess I can jump in. Can you guys hear me okay? I don't have a headset or anything.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm in the middle of Illinois. I'm feeling anxious about Election Day. I'm feeling a little anxious about getting some grading finished before I teach class later today. Otherwise, doing okay. Happy to be with all of you this morning. I'll have to probably, as my family starts to come downstairs, when they come down, I'll go up, so I'll probably be moving at some point. In terms of what I'm looking for in the call, I contacted Mila and Tina to say this earlier. I'm looking to see how we might share the RC work using this media, because my only exposure to learning has been in face-to-face kind of extended workshop spaces. So I'm curious about that.
I'll jump in. I'm in Syracuse. It's a rainy, gray morning here. I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling relaxed and pleasant, and happy that this call is happening. I came back a day or two ago from a 2-day workshop on collaborating on shared purpose, and a lot of the ideas from that workshop are percolating inside of me in ways where I'm excited to implement them or attempt to implement them. And I'm things are going on in Hearth that are exciting, and there's a lot of activity that I'm thinking about, and I'm sharing the desire to explore ways to share and learn about and practice restorative systems and restorative circles, like Tina and Mikhail were just naming. And I have a lot of ideas around that, but also curious about how that's kind of organically growing and coming about from the Systems to Whole Conflict series. So yeah, I'm curious about how it will unfold. I have some, I have more to say, but that's my check-in. I'll leave it there.
Yay.
So since this call is recorded, and also since we don't know one another that well, all of us, maybe to know that we're talking about the same thing. Would anybody like to give a short, brief introduction to what RC is, so that we're not talking about different things? I don't know how to pronounce your name. Mikhail, you have most experience here, I would guess, from all of us. Would you be okay with giving a brief idea or intro?
Sure. Like just an explanation, like a 2-minute explanation of what it is?
Yeah, something like that.
I could do that. So I see restorative circles as a systemic community response system for engaging conflict. The key there for me are both the system part and the engagement part. So it's not a conflict prevention system, it's a conflict engagement system. And the systemic part of that refers to the idea that it's a community agreement, that one of the ways that community members, there's the little echo, maybe if I turn down hold on. Let's see if this works any better. Maybe not. That one of the ways that the community responds to conflict is through this particular process, which is a dialogue process, and which has a preparation component, and it has some individuals who are temporarily in the role of facilitating the conflict. And those same individuals on a different day may be participants in the circle rather than facilitators. And I make that distinction because I want it to be clear that this facilitator is not a professional role. It's not, special class of people. It's something the community does for itself and for each other. And I think that's probably enough by way of just definition.
Does anybody have any questions or comments in relation to this summary that was shared? Do you feel that it's clear enough that we're talking about the same thing?
I see James is smiling.
Yeah. I'm smiling because I imagine that we have, I guess that we have important differences. And I feel like it's possible to say both that we're talking about the same thing and that we have different ideas at the same time. there's nothing that I want to disagree with in what Mikhail said. And I just know that I would say it differently.
How would you say it?
Let's see. I see restorative circles as a particular approach to a particular approach that is offered within a restorative system as a way of supporting people to walk towards conflict, and that the circles, that the exact structure of the circles are going to be a function of that restorative system, so that whatever agreements the people within the restorative system come to, that's what the restorative circles are going to look like, and they can take different forms. And that a system is a set of agreements. And so it's possible for that to look like many different things. But the more explicit the community can make those agreements around what the system is and what the circles are going to look like, the more easy it will be for people to use the system and to understand the parameters of the system.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that there's something around for me, and I do like both the definitions. The more widely the system is, information on the system is available to the community or to the group of people for who it was designed, and by, I should see that wording, for whom, no, by whom it was designed, because it isn't something imposed from outside, like, oh, y'all don't have a very good system of dealing with conflict, so let us bring this to deal with conflict, whether you use the word transform, resolve, not a fan of resolve, walk toward, I like that, or learn from conflict, whatever it is, something to do, when conflict happens. So let us bring this great new technology that really works. No, it's the people in the community or the group who are going to be, involved, that, come up with what works for them within that community or that group. But I like the idea that, yes, they walk toward conflict, and that there's agreements that everyone understands. When conflict happens, how do we call a circle? How does the word get out? And also that the facilitators are really not professionals from inside nor outside the community, that they're regular community members. So I agree with all that.
So, I don't know if I should add something as well. Maybe I want to clarify words like circle or facilitator. It was mentioned a bit before. The facilitator is basically just the person who's coordinating and taking care of, like, making it happen, inviting everybody who people want to be there, and arranging the space for it and the time and so on. Yeah, just making it clear that everybody's on the same page, and then everybody has space to get heard and what's important for them and how they want things to be. And I heard Mikhail was saying as well that just because you're taking on that role doesn't mean that you can also kind of lean back and relax and get support in being heard yourself or understood in how a conflict is affecting you.
Sorry, in a different conflict, not in that same conflict.
Okay.
So we have experimented with having facilitators in very small systems like family systems also express themselves and participate as as other parties to the conflict. I mean, in a pinch, you do what you need to, but it really, 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 really doesn't work well.
Yeah. So that's your experience with trying to be a part of and being heard and understood in how a conflict is affecting you, and taking on the role of hearing and understanding what's going on for everybody else. Or not taking on that role, but providing a space and a structure for it to happen.
Yeah.
And then the circle, I guess that's just basically the idea of how to the concrete situations where people are getting to express what's going on for them, and maybe eventually as well, how something has impacted them, if something has happened or something's going on for them, and or they done something. To be heard in that experience and their perspective, and to think about maybe concrete things that would make things more sweet, easier, nice. If there's something that hasn't worked, or more vague stuff put on the table. It's very abstract when we're talking about it. And that's the dilemma for me, like how to make something concrete and comprehensible for people who want to deal with conflict. Yeah. That was my addition to that. I don't know where we're at the moment. We're having like 1.5 hours left. I don't know if David, you want to say something as well in relation to this. Your idea of RC.
I've been trying to kind of follow along, and I typed out what I did just as sort of a check-in, not as an opinion. I was open for correction or clarification, but based on what Michaela James had expressed or whatever, I was sort of processing that, and it just kind of feels like these are skills that are sitting in the individual that can be developed over time, but I don't know. I'm kind of trailing off here. It's a work in progress.
Yeah, and I wanted to say the idea of the facilitator participating with his or her input on the conflict in some way or the other, being a community member in the process of the circle would probably be analogous to a mediator who is not neutral, who says to the two parties, going into mediation, now I'm not a judge, I'm not an attorney, I'm on no one side, I'm neutral, and then proceeds to give advice, to let this person speak twice as much as the other, and they would have that same feeling. And that's why I really like Dominic's word omnipartial or multipartial as opposed to neutral, because neutral sounds like I could give two shits what happens in this conflict. Y'all work it out, that kind of thing. Whereas omnipartial to me says I'm on everyone's side, like I'm on the community side, that this conflict be worked out in a good way for everyone. So that's just my 2 cents on participation.
Yeah, so thanks everybody. I'm just checking with James and also from Mikhail that you're kind of writing clarifications or your understanding of what other people are saying. Yeah. I guess I wanted to check with James because I noticed at the last call that you were doing that quite a lot, and I just wanted to let you all know that I'm disregarding most of, if it's just kind of paraphrasing or making summaries of what other people are saying, then I disregard that because the text kind of takes away attention from actually listening to people. But if it's like clarifications, like Mikhail was writing now that there might be another person joining the call, that's more relevant for me. But I'm okay with people using the text chat in whatever way makes sense for them, just kind of letting you know where I'm at myself with it. Does anybody have an idea of what you would like to happen next on this call? I feel like the idea that I have, that I sit with right now, is that because I do feel like I have a conflict with you, James, so we're kind of on opposite ends of a conflict. So for me, it would be interesting to do learning by doing. That is that we figure out something that makes sense for us to talk about this conflict, like to figure out the structure or system or the agreements around like what would be a sensible way for at least the two of us to talk it over. How does that sound to you?
Yeah, that sounds fine. I'm open to talking about pretty much anything right now. I'm trying to respect the context of this space as being initiated by you, Mila, and Tina, and Shami. So, I have, I guess the way I'm thinking about it is I'm trying to locate the places of shared purpose. And so I'm, trying to integrate the reality that you guys are kind of going on the fly, changing plans and going on the fly, and seeing, so within that spontaneity, still trying to go with where you'd like to take it. And so I feel a little bit of anxiety around that because I don't know what exactly is going to happen next. And I also, it's anxiety within comfort. So I'm totally fine with it. I'm used to it. We had the last call that we had in Hearth on Sunday included like 4 people trying to talk at the same time and screaming at each other for 10 minutes before they got tired and just said, okay, let's do something else. So I don't think it's going to get like that here, but if it did, I'm comfortable with that. And in terms of the conflict that we may have, or different conflicts that we may have personally with each other, I'm okay either talking about the conflict now, or I'm okay kind of making some kind of plan around a system that we use, or an ad hoc system, some way to support us in being in that conflict.
Okay, so I hear it's a bit kind of nervous because it's not very clear. Like you would enjoy having some clarity around how things are going, and also in that way maybe create more space for yourself easily. But you're open as well to seeing what comes out of this call. That sounds good to me. I'm curious, like how other people. I want to add as well that I'm not so interested in going into specifics before creating or making agreements on like how to talk over our issues. So I'm more on the meta level, or the trying to so I wouldn't go into specifics of you said that on that date, or like, and this affected me in that way, but more that I'd enjoy I mean, I don't mind speaking openly and having things recorded and whatnot, but I don't want to overstep those kind of boundaries now without having any agreements on it. So I'd prefer like coming to the agreements on how to talk about stuff first, and also having the input from other people, because I'm pretty sure that there might be like other people around us during all these months that these conversations and expressing our ideas and opinions and feelings and whatnot, that there are other people who also have their perspective and would like to join. So like how to do that in a way that would feel, starting with the two of us, would feel like meaningful for the two of us, if like yeah. So yeah,
I want to say something.
Yeah.
First, I have to go in 40 minutes, so it's a little before the call ends. And also about agreements, you mentioned clarifying the meaning of facilitator and circle, and I think it's also really helpful to clarify agreements, because I see agreements as being one of the components of a restorative system, in the sense of how an agreement around how we make agreements, or clarity around how we make agreements or decisions as a group of people, is important for us to know, what agreements are on the table being considered, and what possible agreements we have agreed on and or have not agreed on, and why. Since it is, I agree with you that it's important to, it would be more valuable to make some agreements around what we're doing, rather than to just go into storytelling and details from the past.
So my idea of like how to make an agreement that makes more, where I can trust that it actually makes sense for the people involved, it's starting from somewhere. Like for instance, with you and I saying, okay, this way of talking about it would feel easy for me, or make sense to me, or I would get something out of it, and then checking in with one another, okay, and then also letting it take time. So I'm not gonna now, like in 40 minutes, try to like, let's let's squeeze in some idea of like I'm willing to, I prefer like letting it take the time until it's clear for the people who are involved that they're actually into the idea of trying it out. Is that kind of clear? Like, how does that, how do you hear that?
I'm just assuming that that's posed to everyone and not necessarily to me.
Yeah, it's kind of a response in relation to that I do find it important as well, the question about an agreement, like how do you know that a decision, who is it made by, how, and so on, that those things are important. Okay, so how do the rest of you feel spending a little bit of time on checking possible agreements for James and I to enter a conversation about stuff that has happened before? To use some time for that during this call. Is that something that would be meaningful for you, or would you like, do you have, I'm very open to myself, and I hear that James is also kind of open to like it going in many directions here. It's a very open space. So I would like to hear a little bit from the three of you who have not spoken so far. And of course, you're not forced to have an opinion or say anything either.
I feel pretty open to wherever the group goes. Maybe it's useful to, rather than have us choose between doing one thing and not doing that thing, for us to have 2 or 3 items on the menu to choose from. The tricky thing about figuring out agreements to support Mila and James is that it's not clear to me that it's taking place within a community. It can be done. We've done lots of circles like that. But it's a little bit different than kind of starting with a community, and as a community going through the process of figuring out, how is it that we want to handle conflict together. So we can do it, and it's not necessarily kind of the prototypical way of developing a system. So maybe I'll throw out 2 other ways that we could spend time together, I think. One is we can talk about what that community system building could look like, and maybe since 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 5 of us are in Hearth, we could use Hearth as a case study, just as a community that has been talking about developing a system. Another thing I imagine we could do is just talk about the art of facilitation, and just kind of what that looks like and what are the challenges. And I mean, there's a lot of rich work that could be done there.
Yeah, I'm in agreement about that, and also, yeah, that it is more meaningful if everyone involved has been or can agree that they've been impacted some way by whether it's the act or the what happened, that we can agree that what happened impacted us all in some way. I guess I'm talking about meaningful, but I also like the idea of talking about the art of facilitation, and that there are different ways to do it. So kind of having I guess I see that as maybe a meta conversation about the conversation that may happen. Those are just my quick thoughts.
David?
Yeah, Mikhail really caught my attention actually when he started talking about, I would learn a lot from living vicariously through the conflict that's real for you and James, obviously, but by focusing there, I see that there's a pitfall if you move towards establishing or sharing a broader understanding of restorative circles within an entire community, then you get to explore a lot of strategies that might not necessarily come up within individual conflict. And the art of facilitation really kind of sounded very appealing to me. It, I don't know, somehow it catches, I guess, my selfish drive or interest a little bit more.
Yeah. what I heard mentioned as well also before by Tina was this whole issue of what is a community, especially when it comes to online. So that's also kind of an interesting question maybe to start with, because yeah. Yeah, I heard at least a few of you mentioning the facilitation thing. Does anybody want to kind of throw out into the space where you would like to go and just see if we go in that direction? If I'm being very vague, then just let me know. Would you be okay with maybe having a brief sharing first about what is this online idea and community? How do we view community? What does it mean to us? Because that's also part of like, who do we create a system with and so on.
Sure. So I'm going to share about what online community or what community means to me. Community, for me, is a collection of relationships. And those relationships don't necessarily have to be enjoyable. I think the word community often gets an unfairly rosy picture, as if we're all holding hands in a circle around a bunch of houses, whereas actually community tends to be include both the benefits and also the shitty aspects of being in relationship with other people. So whatever it is that is keeping us together in those relationships, whatever those relationships are looking like, is the community that we're a part of. And you know, the online world and my relationships with real people online is a kind of community for me, and it's meaningful to me. I get a lot out of it, and I recognize that it's different. It has a different nature to it than my in-person relationships, but there's a lot of crossover. So I think it's an oversimplification just to talk about community online or not online. But there are difficult questions to answer. And the fact that we as a group of people keep coming back to each other, because I've known people here for years, some people here for years, you know, for me, it is a real community, because there are people who live in my neighborhood who I've known for years, who I feel less connected to in a real way. So that said, I think that there are ways to build community or to contribute to community, depending upon what it is that I want. And I want to have relationships with people that are want to be in relationship with people that I feel like I'm benefiting, that I feel like my needs are getting met in various areas, or that when they're not, I can speak freely about that. And I think, yeah, I mean, a really important aspect to that is that people have the capacity to be in relationship with me, so that if there is a conflict, if there is difficulty, they don't disappear. And disappearing for me is the most damaging part of strategy of relationship that I experience. So what I like about the people assembled here in this group today are that they are people who continue to come back and relate to me regardless of whatever difficulties happen. There is continued engagement in the relationship. And so that's why I'm here. I like that aspect of my relationships with people here. But that is, in a way, that's only a bottom line. It's having engagement with someone is the minimum. And then I'd like to build understanding from that foundation.
I just want to say to whoever joined the call, I don't know if you can hear us or not. The call is recorded and will be shared. And my name is Mila, and I, without saying it, took on the role of facilitating the call. Shami, who was supposed to take it on, had some stress around arranging some troubles coming up, so wanting to have it a bit more easy. So would you like to introduce yourself, whoever joined? You don't have to speak if you don't want to.
Maybe it's Escaldea, and I'm probably mispronouncing the name, but
hi, can you hear me?
yes.
Oh, hi. Sorry. Yes, it's me, Escaldea. I am using the Zoom for the first time on a different phone, and it works differently, and I'm running off to the next room because Aidan is in the bathtub. So,
Welcome.
thanks. Hi.
So the conversation is kind of going in a little bit flowing here and there. And right now we're with the question of what does community mean, and especially when it's online, what does it mean to us? James started by sharing a bit.
Yes. Okay. Good.
So maybe I'd like to check who would like to go next.
I can jump in. One of the ways that Dominic talks about community that I really like is the reality of knowing that, like, the connection that we feel and the understanding we have that if the other person goes down, in some ways we go down too. And if the other people benefit, then there's some benefit to us. Like that type of kind of connection is a way of thinking about who is part of community. And one of the things I like about it is that it actually takes away the distinction between, face-to-face and virtual spaces, and like the different ways that we have of relating to each other. So I offer that for us as well. Escaldea, thank you for that visual. It's making me smile.
Yeah.
I can go next. I don't feel like I exist within a community myself. Community has really like a strong idea. Speaks to some of what James was saying as well, that you really have a sense that you matter to other people. And I don't feel like I have that in any of the structures like country, state, or friendship circles that I exist within. But what's interesting to me is, especially when it comes to Facebook, that may or may not, it's existed for 10 years maybe in my life, and who knows what other spaces or what will come next. But it's very easy for people to belittle it or kind of say that, oh, that's not in real life. When in fact, I, as a person, I am affected by what's going on there and the interactions that are going on there. My self-development, I would not be in the same place today without Facebook or the interactions there. For me, books, for instance, have been really important way of getting to understand myself, the world, the systems, how they work. And books are you know, a very peaceful way of taking in of information, because I get to deal with the stuff that I take in. I create my own space and process for it. But when I'm online and I'm exchanging thoughts and ideas with other people, it's a more stressful space. It's very easy to get in touch with that kind of all the emotional stuff that's not resolved or yeah, so it's a very anxious space to be in, can be, but it also really a space to be able to explore all that stuff. And so I'm aware of that. I feel most spaces that I exist within are quite like floating and don't really have clear agreements. It's just people interacting, and then you silently get into these ideas of how things are supposed to be. So I love the idea of clarity around what to expect, predictability, and trust that if there's something up for me, I know where I can turn and get support with it. Yeah, so community for me, it's really, sounds cliche, but we live on planet Earth and there's no way of getting out of that. So we're all affecting one another, and yeah, but then you can take it to smaller groups of people or larger groups of people. Yeah.
I can speak to something James said, struck me, that within, say, a neighborhood or an in-person community, for example, this neighborhood or community that I live in, I know very few of my neighbors, and I've been here in December, I guess it'll be 3 years. And yet the neighborhood that I moved from, there was a lot more, you know, there'd be like neighborhood meetings, both formal, kind of the East Row Historic Neighborhood, you know, monthly meeting, and there would be more informal, and there seemed a lot more impact on one another simply because, I don't know, the homes were closer together. There was something about, that relationships were more maybe explicit. I mean, and here they're implicitly, if someone's doing something, making a lot of noise, or doing something that disturbs other neighbors, rather than talking to people, there's this next door, which, speaking of social media, is like a social media platform that people get on, and it can be kind of connecting. Information can be shared. There can be, you know, co-learning, you might say, and all of that. And it's still once removed from sitting down, you know, with your neighbors or saying hi to them in the same space. And so, yeah, that's interesting. Even people sharing a space, you know, physically, does not mean that we have agreements or realize how we impact one another, you know, to a lesser or greater degree. And then two, as Mila said, Facebook, for me, it can be used in all different ways. Some people probably just have their family or very close people that they share with or whatever. And others kind of have, I think because of the MDC community, for me, I have about 900 and some odd Facebook friends, and I'm struck by how many of those are, you know, from, like, say, the NBC community that I've never met in person, but I feel I have some shared, you know, connection with. So, yeah, all of that is kind of how community can be on different levels for me. I'm complete.
It's David and Askaldea left, if you want to share something about community, what it means to you.
I think at this point I'd just be echoing what you kind of expressed, Mila, and that's, you know, the more I get caught up, I guess, in what's going on globally, environmentally, and then politically and whatnot, it just kind of feels like the world's getting smaller and we're all part of the same community, and our actions are impacting others in broad and significant ways all the time. And if we don't develop the capacity, I guess, to manage that more intelligently, then we're going to all suffer a tremendous amount.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done.
Askaldea, I know you just came into this thing like that, so if you want to share anything unrelated to the question of what community means to you, you're very welcome to do so as well, just to kind of make your presence known. And since this is online, silence is also okay. The facilitation part, I noticed that that had some resonance in other people when you mentioned that. So would that be a possible topic to go into, or again, I really want to leave it open to what happens next.
I'm willing to talk about facilitation. I don't know if that's where the energy is, and, you know, I don't know.
I'd say you for me.
What did you?
Yes, for me, I think it's a place to kind of go.
David gave a thumbs up, yeah.
Yeah, something. I'm not totally against it. But something in my gut tells me that that's the wrong direction. And I mean, I'm trying to conceptualize how it relates to, let's say, we started talking about making agreements, and like I think having facilitation skills is valuable, but it feels a little bit divorced from like us actually having pursuing what Mila brought up around if there's a conflict, what could we put in place to make it easier for us to go to go there, and you know, what agreements, what possible agreements could we make that would do that? That feels a little separate from just talking about facilitation in the abstract.
I want to clarify that my idea of doing the learning by doing thing is not to, again, kind of, this is how you do things and then impose it on people, but just to try things out. How does this feel? And then see, could this be a sensible part of a system, not the system? So that's my idea with going into exploring agreements around talking about things that have been painful for us to talk about.
I'm not sure what you just said. I feel I wonder if maybe you could say it again, or somebody else could say it. It didn't, and something about that was not easy for me to understand.
Here's what I heard. I heard that Mila wants us to know that in exploring like how to make some agreements with you, James, that she wants us to know that this is not necessarily the way, but rather an exploration of how this might happen. Something like that?
Yeah, that it's learning. It's learning. It's not saying this is the thing that I want. It's putting ideas out there, trying them out, and then say, no, this was horrendous. This was horrible. This didn't work. And to be open about it too. So yeah, just an openness around, we all have ideas about what we might want to do, what might make sense for us, and to put those ideas out there and to try them, and also to think about how can we feel emotionally safe while exploring those things. So those being a part of the agreement that we make. Is this more clear, James, to you?
It's not. It sounds very abstract to me. I just keep hearing that anything is okay, everything is okay. If you have ideas, it's okay. And I'm not actually. I want more clarity, actually, and specifically and concretely.
Yeah. For instance, to give an example, so if the idea thrown out would be that, I just want to meet up with people who do feel that they're impacted by some of the stuff that has happened. Can we then maybe agree on mentioning, like formulating what that thing was, so that it's clear for those people who, feel drawn to it, that they know that this is aimed to them. And then how do we meet up and talk about it? Like, what would be a sensible way? Tina, you talked about some the 3 questions around conflict. What was it? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is it that book, Difficult Conversations?
Yeah, there were like 3 questions or something.
Yeah, it's like, I really like that book for both, hey Ben, for framing, whether it's in person, anticipating having a difficult conversation with someone, or just framing, whether it's in mediation, and I suppose it could be in, a more restorative sort of circle where there's, 2 people most impacted by some sort of harm, and then a community too, but that the conversation is, there's really 3 conversations. The first one is the what happened conversation. And that's really, I think, Mila, you and I talked, yesterday about that we all know that the same act, maybe we agree on something happened. My story, what happened, and yours could be so different that observers would go, wow, are they talking about the same thing? But it is so that's story, and then the second level of it is the feelings conversation, which in more some formal settings of organizations, mediation, and arbitration, say in a business or something, there's this idea that we leave feelings out of it, just facts, and we all know as human beings that don't work so well, that feelings are going to be part of, the conversation, and what is, there's facts in those feelings and such. And then the third one, which is really implicit a lot of times, but it's so super critical, is the identity conversation, which means what does it say about me as a person that I'm in this conflict with this person at this time? And that one is around mattering. I see it as, it goes deeper. And that's where a lot of the, like the conflict is in that. So that's just an overview of that concept.
So what I'm trying to say is like when making agreements about having a specific conversation, that I'd like to hear the ideas around it. What are the wishes around it? Like for me personally, it would just be to get into the same space with other people where a lot of people impacted by the same thing have a chance to speak their perspective on it, and just to enrich my life by that process of kind of, wow, I'm with all these people who have their own kind of things that happen resonate in them in a different way than in me. And there's also commonalities, to just feel more of a connection or understanding, like around all these, all of us. Yeah, so that would be something that would be meaningful for me. But then I don't know if you in particular, James, like if I mentioned the idea of let's have a conversation about some of the stuff that has happened, like what are the ideas that come up for you that would be, meaningful? Is that more clear what I'm talking about, the throwing out ideas part, but and not saying that this is like an overall system for dealing with conflicts, but it's kind of trying out something that then might be a part of how to.
What I'm hearing is that it's like a brainstorm, and that it's an invitation for lots of ideas around possibilities to get put on the table. And like with Tina's questions, there's different ways of bringing a lot of those ideas to the table. And I also heard that you want to hear specifically what other people's ideas and wishes are around either having a specific conversation about a specific conflict, and that you don't know what other people want. And I guess my feeling about that, my response to that is...
I would like to clarify before you go on.
Yeah, sure.
I think more my idea would be that, okay, James and Milla are inviting other people to a party. James and Milla set kind of the ideas for how they would like that party to be out of their own wishes of what's a fun party. So then this invitation is put out there for other people who kind of, do they want to join or not? So I see it not more as like, I see it, it can be nice to have, yeah, I'm going in different directions, I know, but I'm just kind of maybe responding to the idea of an overwhelming idea of like listening to everybody. So I would like to have like the main decision in the people who are kind of the life of the party in that sense. Yeah.
I guess the correction that you made is that it's you don't just want to hear the ideas from the members of the conflict, but you want to invite a wider contribution of ideas from people about the conflict or about how to hold the conflict?
Mm. I'm kind of confused about what that like summary means. I'm okay with you just going with whatever spontaneously came up for you first, and then maybe I'll get more clear on like how we understand one another at this moment.
Yeah, the response I wanted to make was just that, like, I think we need to take responsibility for saying what we want, and at some point commit to it. Commit to some kind of concrete thing that we want, because that's how we'll build something. Maybe that there won't be a perfect solution, but that by choosing something concrete, like making a decision about what we want, it's a way for us to get the rubber to hit the road, to make it supports other people in making decisions too. I guess it's a way of just saying like the brainstorm session has to end at some point, and then in order to move forward.
Yeah, I'm going to summarize it with we're talking about baking a cake, and we're talking about what ingredients we want in it. But at some point, we just have to try that to make that cake and to taste it and to see, was this blah, or how can we make it differently? So that's the thing. And I'm pretty clear on that. That's not going to happen during this call, that we get like to a clear idea about the ingredients and that we want in order to, when baking.
There are not that many agreements. There are not that many ingredients. So I mean, I can run through the list pretty quickly. Who will facilitate is probably the first question. If you want somebody in a facilitator role. So that's one. Another one is where and when, so maybe that's 2 or 3, will the conflict be engaged? Another one is who should be invited. And that's usually worked out in the preparation meetings with the facilitator, but that's a systemic thing too. How do we figure out who should be invited? And the last one is probably how will we talk to each other, or how will we listen to each other? What will dialogue look like? And RC takes as a default, sort of, Dominic's explanation of the relationship between NVC and RC is that NVC is the wine and RC is the decanter. So it's a container to hold, to hold a nonviolent dialogue that NVC developed. So people take turns speaking, and the person they're speaking to is invited to say back the essence, the heart of what they heard, in a way that should be familiar to most folks in the NVC community. But the beauty of RC is that the process works even with folks who have no NVC experience. And then we check with the speaker to see if the speaker is heard in the way that he or she wanted. And then the next person is invited to speak. But that doesn't have to be the only, the only way that dialogue happens, right? So outside of NVC, you can create rules for dialogue that are simply as simple as we'll take turns speaking. Every person will have 2 minutes, and then it's the other person's turn, as a way to kind of care for and take care of interruptions, and what's a dynamic that sometimes occurs where one person is really dominating the airtime. So agreements about how we speak to each other can be really, really simple. But those, I think, are the 5, right? Who's in the support role, who's invited, when, where, and how will we talk to each other?
David is taking notes.
I have
Yeah.
a question.
Yeah.
Michaela, I mean, Mila taught me about reflection, I guess. And I don't know, in taking notes, I'm probably not demonstrating that terribly well, but as a facilitator, when you're providing these strategies to people, I can't imagine that I wouldn't personally get kind of obsessed with the idea of trying to push reflection as a communication strategy and trying to set something up because of the risk of dealing with people, I guess, who listen to respond rather than listen to reflect. How does that, I mean, we talk about sort of being objective and being completely, I guess, putting this in front of people, letting the community decide for themselves, but
So in this, if we're in that community system building phase, then I talk about the good reasons why reflection is a good idea. That it slows the dialogue down. It creates conditions for the message that's sent to be the same as the message that's received, which is often not the case in general, and begins to be less and less likely the more stimulated and agitated we get, which is often what happens in conflict. I haven't really received a lot of pushback on that. But if I did, if a community wanted to do something else, I'm not attached to that strategy. I want to focus on the need, which is that the message sent is the same as the message received, because that seems pretty important if we're going to engage dialogue. And if there are other ways that we can take care of that, then great. I'd love to experiment and see it.
So there's half an hour left of this call, and I feel, James, would you be open to having another call where we're focusing on the how to get into this conversation?
Oh yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. So I'm suggesting maybe arranging a time for that outside of this call. And maybe if I can, with Tina and David, if I could just have like a text chat with the 4 of us and arrange the time for the call. Are you okay with that?
The four being Mila, James, Dave, and Tina.
Yes. I'm bad at numbers. I'm counting in my head still. Was that really 4? Yeah, that was 4. And then I'm just, again, trying to open up the space for what do you want to do for the 30 last minutes? What would be meaningful for you so you don't feel like a machine, but as a human being who's here right now? Any questions or curiosity still? I mean, I really heard the eagerness there, David, and like wanting to learn more about the facilitation thing. So I'm guessing that's still there for you. And yeah, whatever you're thinking, it's nice to hear, all of you.
I was wondering, Mikhail had mentioned that the 4 of us, myself, Mikhail, David and James are members of Hearth, and Mila, you are not, and that I would think of one strategy would be to invite you to Hearth and perhaps use that space as the place for like sort of continuing the conversation. It's just one idea.
That would not be comfortable for me, for the simple reason that it's a space that I view more as James's space, and there's already behaviors that I'm kind of sensitive to, that I feel uncomfortable with, and I don't want to, at this moment in time, expose myself further to that. So, yeah, all of us are in the NVC witness group as well. I don't know, but yeah, I really hear that. I mean, and I think it's great that you're really into this, like creating something in that group, but I'm personally not comfortable with the idea of entering that space at this moment in time. So that would not work for me.
Yeah, I had forgotten about NVC Witness, but yeah.
But yeah, you're maybe having an interest towards talking more about what's going on in Hearth in relation to creating a system, that wanting to talk more about that maybe here on this call, or that was the question.
Well, I'm aware, I think James had said he needs to go a bit before the call officially ends, and so just to be mindful of that.
I think I'm gonna go too. This seems like a nice, kind of transition for me to do that. I'm missing out on all my family morning things, and I enjoyed hanging out with you all. Almost all of you are people I already know, and Mila, was nice to kind of make face-to-face contact and get to know you a little bit here. So thank you for including me, and I will take a bye.
Thank
you. Yeah, thanks for joining and for sharing your experience. Yeah,
it was really valuable. Thank you.
I do need to go now, so thank you, everyone. I'm looking forward to continue this conversation. We'll work it out and with the time, and everyone be well.
Bye, James.
Hi, James.
Do you have 5 more minutes? No. Okay. I was thinking of working it out on the call.
Yeah, maybe scheduling stuff outside of this call could work.
Yeah, it's always nicer to just get it done. I hate doing the...
I hate it too. With the time differences, even if even let's say we didn't have, say we were all in the same time zone, even then it's kind of a bother, let alone with those differences. So, yeah.
So, David, you as a human being, how are you? And is there something you would like to do? I still have time for half an hour to talk about whatever. Maybe the two of you could talk about what is going on in the Hearth group in relation to systems building, where you're at in the making agreements process and so on. If you want.
Nothing comes up for me right now with that, but getting back to the discussion about holding this interaction in Witness or in Hearth, I mean, neither of those are really neutral territory, and it kind of seems to me that probably what we would want is neutral territory or something that's specially set up for that purpose. I don't know how that feels to you, but I don't know. Sometimes I don't know exactly when to jump in with some of these things, and I'm listening to everybody else sort of play things out, and then there's a great big long dead silence, and I kind of feel like it might have been a good time to introduce it. So I feel like, this is after the fact, and Mikhail's gone and James is gone now, but
Yeah.
I'm curious about actually something that Elke was talking about as far as setting up a Water's Edge or River's Edge group to manage conflict. That sounded like it might be interesting. I haven't talked to her in forever, but I'm wondering exactly what's going on with that. Have you heard of that before? Is that new?
What I heard of it is very minimal. And my understanding of it was that it was supposed to deal with intensity, which is a very vague concept of what that is and what that holds and how. So I guess I don't know if they're still working on it or what's going to happen with it. I don't know if the direction was to create systems, or apart from a system or a place where people can express what's there for them in a way that's safe for them, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I always talk and talk. My answer is I don't know.
I don't know either.
That's the correct answer. Yeah. No, but I definitely hear you on that. Like, what's a neutral space? Who are the neutral people? Who are the, yeah. But I mean, to me, it makes sense that if you're in that space and you're creating a system, then you're going to learn from it and you're going to, work it out, what makes sense or not eventually. I hope. I have hope.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention, I'm really, I love that we had this call and that those who were on it were the right people, that, there was an invitation and it looked like I am not great at technology things and checking, and it looked like the invitation I shared to Hearth and maybe the one to NBCA said no location rather than having my my Zoom number, Zoom room, but it is that is what it is. But be that as it may, Mila, when you asked within Hearth what's kind of going on, I've seen, and I'm going to talk about David a bit, and you can correct my perceptions or agree or whichever, that I see David having been, and I'm pretty new to Hearth really, but seeing him play a role of, and there's several other members that have said, oh, here's David the peacemaker. He's kind of gotten that label, but that I'll see him doing what my perception is and my limited experience happens in a restorative circle, for example, that reflection kind of facilitation role, asking so-and-so, I'm hearing that you've said this or you're feeling that, is that accurate? And then maybe inviting the other person to respond or whatever, in a way to bring some structure to those when there is, some conflict. And that's whether it's our live call, our Zoom call of the other day, which was it was chaotic. People were at different places within that, and James mentioned people talking at the same time and talking over each other, which does happen, in a lot of spaces where there's conflict. But that I saw that David, there was like an attempt to hear and be heard, or to help meaning get exchanged, or at least some understanding. And also then within text, I've also seen that happen some, and I've not, tried that out myself. And for me, text, the problem is there always is this cross purposes with, somebody posts something and it's not in real time. Someone else comes along and says, are you talking to me? was that question to me, you know? So I always prefer the either this or, you know, in person, but that it's possible to do some of that clarification even within like a text environment.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
always.
Go ahead, Mila.
No, I'm just thinking in text that it's always hard to know what's meaningful for another person, because reflecting can just be like have the opposite effect as well. Like you're just distancing yourself, you're not revealing anything of what's going on for you, or blah 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 blah. So I mean, it's very hard to know what people want in text or what they're going through. Like, yeah.
Context
yeah.
is really difficult.
Yeah, but I definitely value that thing as well, like trying to listen to one another and trying to create that space and presence where somebody is actually heard. So, yeah.
I was thinking about how in the past 6 months, I've had opportunities, I guess, to kind of interact via email or correspondence, written correspondence. And that hasn't been my focus. And I've been really, really curious about applied linguistics and whatnot, and how text gives you the time to kind of pour over language and detail and really hash it out, I guess, slowly and meticulously at your own speed, and try and nail down sort of hidden meaning or double entendre and improve, I guess, your language skills. And the past few days, actually, I kind of feel like I'm just stuttering garbage. It's been kind of frustrating for me. I think I'm preoccupied with other things that are messing with my bandwidth a bit. I tried to do something yesterday or whatever between a couple of people in conflict, and I kind of felt like I recognized that it wasn't about me, but I felt like there was absolutely no value with my presence, and I probably should have stuck around, as painful as it was to kind of watch everything that was going on. And I don't know, I just kind of felt like even being there was more of a liability than an asset. So I don't know, it depends on the day, sort of how well I do with this. I mean, I appreciate what Tina was sort of expressing with what she's seen, but I'm feeling very, very clumsy still, and kind of like I'm exploring so much different information that's layered and intertwined that I lose focus sometimes, or lose my purpose, I guess.
Yeah, I'm hearing two things, David, and I remember that are important, that your capacity, your resource, internal resources, et cetera, aren't always the same in different situations or conflicts, or, you know, at different times. And that's part of being human. And I'm aware that that's a factor. And number two, that you brought up, that text, I kind of was giving the negative side of text as I see it, that the confusion, or as we talked about before, the lack of nuance. There's not the nonverbals, and there's like, is somebody, were they being sarcastic, or were they are they serious? You know, you don't know always with text. But the advantage of text in slowing things down, and that isn't present in the real-time discourse, we would hope for a dialogue, but a lot of times it turns into a verbal fight, or it turns into, you know, people talking over one another, and at least text sort of slows things down, and then you can ask for, did you mean XYZ when you said, you know, so there's both advantages and disadvantages to that.
If I'm asking you two, like, if there would be a conversation between me and James, what would be like a meaningful space for you, if you would feel like you're an important part as well as somebody who's human and has feelings and gets affected by stuff going on? Like, I never know if I'm making sense when I throw questions out there, but you can receive it in whatever way.
Boy, I'm happy to hear you express that. I like your analogy, actually, of the two people choosing to throw a party. And I was kind of wondering how Mikhail would have responded to that as, you know, is the facilitator sort of a party planner? It's, you know, okay, well, here are all the options or whatever to put in front of the two of you that you can choose from to make it your own. You know, I kind of, where I get tripped up, I guess, is the idea that you're supposed to kind of have all of these options understood before the conflict even arises. People are supposed to sort of have RC under their belt and NVC under their belt and know what their resources are before the conflict arises, because otherwise you're caught in a top-down delivery of education. Here comes the instructor. The instructor is not neutral. You know, is it a chicken the egg argument, or what am I seeing there? How do I reconcile that?
I guess a lot depends on like how much you feel like you're at the same level with the person who's facilitating. So if there's some kind of power dynamic, whatever that might be, you know, the cultural stuff that we learn, then if you're not aware of it when you're facilitating, of course it can get messed up. That, I mean, I'm aware of that I just took on this call now randomly because and I'm aware of that. Okay, me as a person can prevent people from saying what they want or think, and also the style that I'm doing it might be super confusing, or, you know, there's so many different things. But what sounds like easy to me in the, yeah, like I said before, like my experience with RC was that I went to European NBC Summer Festival. It's once a year, and it was in Poland, I think, in 2013. So I asked if it was an open space, so people who came there, they made their own program. So I asked for somebody to make an introduction to restorative circles, because I'm in conflict all the time. So I need something. And so there was like an introduction to it. And I also had 2 circles, one with a person who didn't really have any experience of RC, so it was a bit confusing. And that was, yeah. And then another one with the people who also did the introduction. And even though it was like a time crunch and all this kind of stuff, I can still see a purpose in keeping it simple, like keeping it like, okay, you really listen to one another and then you have it reflected back. But I can also see that the importance of being able to say no to reflecting back, especially I feel as a woman, I'm so trained to listening to the feelings and needs of other people. So being placed in that role, if I'm hurt by what somebody else has done, it might just be very, very heavy, especially if the other person doesn't get to that point of understanding what what I'm about. So I can just think of like different things there in relation to who hears it and how those reflection chains go. Like if Tina has done something and I'm upset with her and I just can't stand the idea of reflecting her back, that maybe she can say it to you and then you tell it to me and then I reflect it back to you, and then like just tiny things like that might give me more emotional like comfort when being in a space.
Well, with my limited experience of actually live restorative circles, but with having practiced the semi-simulated, this is such a long title, semi-simulated restorative circle facilitator practice, we worked with, a conflict that the initiator or the person bringing the conflict on the call it was live or real to them, and then other people took, different roles and that kind of thing. But that the word that I use that I found really important is practice, because sort of just, and I guess your experience there, Mila, at the European Festival, I'm hearing it was open space and people could ask for what they need or request, and someone would offer, well, okay, I'll be facilitator, but without that experience or that sort of practice in doing it, it naturally would be a bit more chaotic. And also to get to the script of how the circle process is laid out, the facilitator would ask who would like to speak about what's true to them, and then the facilitator invites the speaker to speak who they want to be heard by, and the speaker could perhaps pick not the person that they have the most direct conflict, but I could say, I want David to reflect what I'm saying, and what I'm saying is something about what Mila did maybe. I've not, and Mikhail would be able probably to speak more on this, but I think that's a possibility. And in that way, Mila, what you're speaking to would filter it some. And then another thing, just from my mediation experience and also in like circle practice, if someone's saying the same thing, they seem to be saying the same thing 3-4 times, and others are thinking, what the, we heard that. The speaker is doing that because they don't feel heard by someone. That's a real hint, Whereas I know in some forms of mediation or different things that aren't like restorative, the idea is like, okay, we've heard that, let's move on. Or there's this sense of, and to me, what's valuable is somehow to get someone to reflect, so that person feels that they've been gotten. So that's just my 2 cents. Mm-hmm. When I feel gotten, there's something that can settle within me, and then I'm open to hearing other information,
The two of you have pretty much just given me 2 light bulb moments or whatever in the course of about 3 minutes, I think. It's, with what was going on with my frustrations yesterday or whatever, and then another time about easily a year ago.
Yeah.
But I also heard your thing about what's the facilitator's role, and the different things that influence what that person does there. The relationship that you're having with that person, basically. How important it is to kind of create a relationship somehow. But yeah, like why I don't think in all cases that maybe a facilitator is needed, maybe just kind of the idea of what's going to happen, but yeah, I'm just thinking random things now.
I like your random things. I mean, we started yesterday with sort of my perception or understanding was that facilitation can be shared within a group of people that, kind of understand the process, and they'll just bounce back and forth and support one another and sort of, oh, this needs to be done. And so I'll jump in and help out here. And then if somebody doesn't seem to be making a lot of progress as a facilitator, then somebody can easily step in and support them. And I mean, the strategy that you just proposed, it's not the first time it's been put in front of me, but I wish I'd thought about it yesterday to use it. If somebody chooses not to reflect because they really don't want to, going to an alternate is, yeah, I'm getting to the point where I'm thinking out loud rather.
Yeah, and my understanding too, and I've not been to, and there are communities that have in-person semi-simulated restorative circle facilitator practice, whether it's, in person, is that co-facilitation is generally used. And Mikhail could speak more to this, but that there's not this one facilitator that all the onus is on them to say who speaks and to track meaning, because tracking meaning is, my understanding, is a big part of being facilitator. So they have a co, and that co can step in.
Right.
There may be like a designated named facilitator or something that it's shared. That co can see that, the facilitator is struggling or something, and step in by asking questions, or so that it's shared somewhat.
Yeah, I want to take back what I just said about, of course, it's really nice if it's possible to lean back and trust that somebody's taking care of things. Yeah, because it's heavy when you're emotionally bogged down by a conflict to then also do all the practical stuff and no way. But and for sure, like that there's two persons, then there's more safety in that things are not forgotten, or like that the attention is put. Yeah, I want to say, because David, maybe I gave the impression that there was I had two conflicts going on at that NBC summer camp, and one where it didn't go so well, and that was a person who didn't really have experience of restorative circles, and then the other one went quite well, and they did actually stick to this kind of paper script of what would you like to be heard in by whom, and like this weird language, but it was still kind of clear what the process was about. And they also had two facilitators, so I think I got just from a practical idea of how the process works in that part, apart from the maybe spending enough time on the whole conversation, or but and also the person that I had a conflict with in that circle had more experience of NBC as well, so it was better at hearing. So I would, so that's why why talk about the cake instead of just kind of trying it out and then talk about the cake?
Yeah.
That's the learning that I prefer. Yeah.
Yeah, and something occurs to me when Mikhail said the agreements can include each person has 2 minutes to speak, and then reflect, and something in me, I'm a bit of what it is, I would go with the flow, or I conceive of myself as I'm flexible. I don't like a lot of structure, but at the end of the day, yes, I do. If I'm being honest, structure. If the whole idea is to exchange meaning, to be heard, and to reach understanding, then there has to be some sort of structure, and that the idea is that agreement is not totally to prevent chaos or anarchy happening. It's to help the speaker hear themselves. It's if I'm allowed to ramble for 20 minutes and then expect the hearer or anyone to reflect, you know what I'm saying? That's not going to work, A. And B, I'm going to really not within myself gather, and say, what's really important to me? Okay, what do I need to say? So there's that structure could help with really exchanging meaning, which is the whole point. And my understanding, go back to flexibility, the community could, within the circle, or at some point people could say, do a feedback thing. How did that work? Did we feel that worked for us? And we could always come with a new agreement. You know, it's really for the needs of that circle. You know?
So I'm just going to remind us that we're at the end of the call. It's like 1 minute left according to my timer. Sorry for not saying anything earlier. Would the three of you be okay with just saying something to finish off the call, and then we continue in text to decide a time for the next call where we talk about agreements for how to talk about the specific conflict between, for instance, myself and James. Yeah. I'm just going to push it through. Yeah. I'll start. Yeah, I'm grateful for the call. I'm a bit disappointed. I would have wanted to see Shami's facilitation style, and also not wanting to feel like a big boss who's just taking control. Of course, I understand that the person facilitating influences a lot as well, so that gets tiring. But yeah, I'm just grateful. I feel like I got something concrete out of the call, and I like that. And also the idea of doing what I enjoy doing, which is learning by doing. So like that's kind of insight. And it's just cool that you exist and that you like do your things in the world, and yeah, that you think it's okay showing up. That's nice. That's me.
My optimism that I expressed at the beginning of the call was rewarded again, and I'm kind of appreciating the fact that when I started interacting with you, the two of you actually, my perception was that you were instructors and that it was very top down, and I feel more and more like I'm relating to peer, and you know, I appreciate you sharing all of the information and wisdom with me, but it feels like, at least to some degree, I'm catching up a little bit and sort of becoming part of the community, which is nice, in small steps over a long period of time. But I really enjoy, and I'm noticing too that, you know, I still really kind of enjoy the casual exchanges in smaller communities and one-on-one more than I do the group. You know, I'm still kind of working towards developing a comfort in 12-person groups or 30-person groups. It's probably my Achilles heel, but it doesn't surprise me either. I mean, it's flexing a muscle, I guess. I'm done.
Thanks, you guys. Yeah, I enjoyed the call, and I'm really glad those that were here, and sad too that Shami didn't make it, but understanding travel international, he's going to travel to San Francisco, so a lot going on for him. And I'm grateful, Mila, that you, as I mentioned, I'm kind of not a structured person, or I think of myself as not a structured person, and so that that how it was facilitated though felt really natural and just kind, and as Dave mentioned, kind of casual, and yet people, I think, had the space to say, you know, to make contributions and to ask questions, and I love that, and I look forward to us continuing sort of the exploration, whether it's again towards agreements that Mila, you and James would have some sort of conversation, and who would support, or any of the online conflicts that have developed. You know, I look forward to just that agreement phase and talking more about that. So I am done.
Okay, so talk to you more in text and enjoy your days.
I'm going to turn off the recording if I know how. Pause. How do I do that?